I left town a year ago with dust on my boots, disappointment on my shoulders, and a promise to myself that I'd return only when I figured out who I wanted to be. That land, 5 sprawling acres of pine trees, soft dirt, and the old wooden cabin my grandfather built, was the only piece of the world that truly felt like mine. So when I finally came back, expecting to find wild grass reclaiming the paths and maybe a few deer roaming freely, I didn't expect to see towering stone walls, luxury gates, and a massive metal sign that looked like it belonged in a billionaire's driveway, boldly announcing, "Maple Ridge Estates, private HOA property." I stood there, blinking, thinking I'd taken a wrong turn, until I walked closer and saw something that jolted me straight into disbelief. 14 giant mansions, all shiny and polished like they had been ripped straight out of a real estate magazine, stood on my land. My land. The land I inherited from my grandfather. The land I never sold, never leased, never handed over. And before I could even take in a surreal view, a sharp voice shot through the air like a mosquito buzzing in your ear. A woman mid-50s, platinum hair, designer sunglasses, and attitude bigger than any mansion behind her, stormed toward me. Everyone called her Karen. Because of course. And she clearly took her job as HOA president more seriously than most world leaders took their countries. "Sir, this is private property," she barked, waving a clipboard at me as if it were a weapon. "Only residents are allowed past the gate. I need you to leave immediately." I looked behind her, then back at her, feeling equal parts confused and amused. "I think you're mistaken," I said calmly. "This is my land." She scoffed so loudly I'm surprised birds didn't fall from the sky. "Your land?" "This land is owned by Maple Ridge HOA. It's been part of the community development plan for over a year. Now please step away from the area before I have to call security." Security. The word hit me funny because I knew for a fact the closest thing to security around here had always been old Bob, who used to nap behind a gas station. So I said nothing, just reached into my backpack and pulled out a thick, carefully laminated document with an embossed county seal on it. My grandfather's deed, the deed that legally passed the land to me, the deed that had never been transferred, sold, or touched by anyone else. Karen froze when I held it out, but she didn't look at it. "No!" She looked at the man approaching us. HOA security officer Bob, complete with a walkie-talkie, reflective vest, and a face already apologizing without saying a word. He inspected the deed, squinted, then nodded slowly. "He's right," Bob said with the weight of someone who desperately didn't want to be part of this conversation. "County records show he owns all 5 acres. The HOA shouldn't have built anything here." Karen's face turned the color of expired yogurt. She pointed a trembling finger at the mansions, then at me, then at the deed. That can't be. We filed for land development expansion. The county approved it." "They approved it," I answered, "because the county thought the land was abandoned. You never contacted me. Not once. And you can't legally take over private property that still has a living owner. The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as premium awkwardness." Karen stumbled over her words, insisting there must have been a clerical misunderstanding, a phrase that in HOA language translates to, "We screwed up so badly even insurance won't cover this." But nothing she said changed the fact that 14 multi-million-dollar homes sat on a legally occupied land that I owned. When word spread to the neighborhood like gossip poured over a megaphone, the HOA board scrambled faster than I ever thought possible. Within 2 days, they called an emergency meeting and summoned me like I was supposed to obey their schedule. I showed up anyway, not because they demanded it, but because I wanted to see their faces when reality sank in. The board sat around a long, shiny table, every member sweating like they were sitting under interrogation lights. Their president, a stiff man named Martin with a mustache that looked deeply disappointed in his life choices, slid a check across the table. "We would like to make you an offer," he said, voice cracking like he was going through puberty again. The check read $300,000. I laughed and slid it back toward him. "Gentlemen," I said slowly, savoring the moment, "you built 14 mansions worth over $3 million each on my land, and you think I'm going to hand over 5 acres for $300,000. Martin swallowed so hard I saw his time move. What price would you consider reasonable? I leaned forward. I'm not selling. You could have heard a butterfly sneeze in that silence. Not selling, Karen croaked. But the neighborhood, those homes, everything's been built already. I nodded. Exactly. And since you built everything illegally on land you don't own, you now owe me. Oh, you, Martin whispered, horrified. For what? I pulled out the paper my lawyer drafted. Rent, I said simply. Monthly land rent. For every house sitting on my property. Karen nearly broke her neck whipping toward me. Rent. You want us to pay your rent. Not me, I corrected. The HOA pays, or the individual homeowners pay, depending on how you decide to distribute it. But someone is paying because your entire neighborhood is sitting on land you don't legally have the right to use. I could have sworn one board member quietly mouthed a prayer. My lawyer had calculated a fair market rate for luxury residential land use, $7,500 per mansion per month. 14 mansions. That made $105,000 every single month. And because they'd been occupying my land for 10 months already without permission, they also owed me 10 months of back rent, all $1,050,000 of it. When I presented the numbers, the room cracked like glass under pressure. Karen looked ready to pass out. Martin lowered his head like he was mourning the loss of his dignity. One board member fainted. Yes, actually fainted. After hours of whispered arguments, panic scribbling, and more calculator tapping in a tax office in April, they finally accepted they had no leverage, no legal standing, and no escape. They agreed to my terms. 3 weeks later, every single homeowner received a notice from the HOA explaining that monthly dues were rising from $900 to a jaw-dropping $2,800. The neighborhood erupted in chaos. Homeowners stormed the HOA office demanding answers. Some screamed. Some threatened lawsuits. One lady threw her latte at the wall and declared war on property fees everywhere. But eventually the truth came out. And when they learned the HOA had built their mansions illegally on someone else's land, they all went silent. Because anger at the HOA was one thing, but losing their multimillion-dollar homes because an illegal land grab, that was a nightmare they couldn't afford. So, surprisingly, many came to me directly. Some apologized. Some shook my hand. One old man even said, "Honestly, son, I'd rather pay you than that miserable HOA anyway." Their words didn't erase what happened, but it softened the blow. I decided not to kick anyone out. It wasn't their fault. They bought homes in good faith. They trusted the HOA, and the HOA betrayed them. So I kept the land. I kept the homes where they were. And the HOA kept paying me every month like clockwork. Karen avoided me like I was a walking IRS audit.